when you became Prime Minister, you raised benefits by 10.1%, you raised pensions by 10.1%, and you reversed recent liberalisations to onshore wind supply and indeed shale gas exploration. In your words, would that not make the situation worse too? And just in addition, if I may, the Conservative Party is putting out literature in the Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election attacking the Liberal Democrats for a target of 300,000 homes a year. Is that no longer the government's target?
Right, so I'm going to try, just so we can get in a few of your colleagues, if everyone tries not to have multiple questions, otherwise we won't be able to get everyone else in, and we hear from some others. Look, I firmly believe that Labour Party policy would make the situation worse. 100% do I believe that, right? And I've tried not to get into too much politics in these things, but you know, what do we know? The Labour Party policy is to borrow £28 billion a year, right? So, you know my view. I think borrowing huge amounts of money at a time when we're facing rising interest rates and inflation is not a good idea. It might be that all the things that would be spent on are things that people think, well, that sounds great, I'd like a bit of that, but I'm telling you, doing that at a time like this is the wrong thing to do. It would make the situation worse, and I wouldn't do that. Yes, Labour Party policy is to not do any more exploration of energy supplies in the North Sea. I think that's a mistake, right? I believe in net zero. We're going to get to net zero, but we're going to get there in decades, not overnight. Between now and then, we are still going to need oil and gas, and if we've got supplies of oil and gas here in the UK, it seems to me absurd not to use those, A, because it will create jobs, but B, because it improves our energy security and it reduces inflation. So, you know, we've seen over the last year what happens when energy dictators around the world are able to hold us to ransom, right? So actually cutting off our own supplies of energy seems to me an incredibly short-sighted policy. It would definitely make the situation worse. And lastly, on public sector pay again, right? Look, I value our public sector workers. They do an incredible job, whether they're in the NHS, whether they're teachers, right? All of them, right? Now, of course, everyone would like to be paid more, but I have to be cognizant of what we can afford, what's responsible, and it would be being dishonest with people to say, okay, great, I'm going to borrow a ton of money so I can give you a generous pay rise, make my life easier for a bit, but knowing full well that all I've done is fuel more inflation and higher interest rates, and that extra pay packet you got 1 month ultimately is just going to get eaten up and then some, because we're dealing with more inflation down the line, right? I'm not going to do that. It is difficult for me. Of course it's difficult for me. Would my life be easier if I was able to say yes to everyone? It would be. But it's the wrong thing for all of you, it's the wrong thing for the country, and it's also the wrong thing for those public sector workers, as I said, because they will also pay the price of higher inflation in the long run. So look, that's my approach on that.